Hey my fellow friends, it's Chris from Chuckhead Gaming, and here's my review for the PSVR version of Solaris Offworld Combat, developed and published by First Contact Entertainment. Solaris Offworld Combat was previously available on the Quest and PC, but now launches on the PlayStation VR headset this May 18th, 2021 for an estimated price of $25. But for the first 2 weeks is available to PS Plus members for 50% off, making only $12 and a bit of change. Of course, you guys know the deal, that depends on your region. From the developer Firewall Zero Hour comes a different flavor of PvP shooter, as they trade up their assault rifles for laser guns. Solaris Offworld Combat is a 4v4 fast-paced frag fest that looks to bring laser tag to the next level. I played this a while back on the PC and Quest, but honestly, I craved my aim controller. Well, it's charged and ready, so let's jump in. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button. It not only helps out my channel, but VR gaming as a whole. And if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing guys, and for video updates, make sure you hit that bell icon. Alright, let's talk graphics. Jumping into Solaris, the art style is certainly a stark departure from Firewall Zero Hour, as the gritty streets and abandoned buildings are left behind in favor of something that looks more like laser tag in the world of Tron. With its electric neon color palette and sports arena vibes, Solaris screams esports shooter, and for better or for worse certainly nails that vibe. Unfortunately, my problem with the Quest and PC version carries over here on the PSVR, and that is that all the arenas seem to blend together, with very few parts of any one arena really standing out. Sure, there's some cool choke points in the map design, but as a whole they all kind of look and feel much the same, very much like the laser tag arena I frequented growing up that would change the layout up slightly every few months. In fact, I actually had to go look up the map count online just to figure it out. By the way, it's 7, with the new map added to the PSVR version. At least, I think it's 7. It feels like 2. As for how the PSVR version holds up to the PC and Quest version, well, it's a bit of a mixed bag, bringing with it most of the lighting and particle effects and the polish from the PC version that were mostly absent from the Quest version, but coming off considerably less sharp, offering up more jagged edges and a slight reduction in character animation like the Quest version. Something I was pretty surprised at considering the simpler visual style to the whole game. In addition, the PSVR version seems to suffer from a lack of smoothness to the gun movement, almost seeming to judder when I move the gun around slowly. This isn't as noticeable when in action, but when taken with the few visual bugs I ran into and some of the matchmaking glitches, I'm a little concerned that this port was rushed out the door. Weapons and character models are nicely designed and look slick, looking very reminiscent of First Contact's first title, ROM Extraction, a little known title that was supposed to come to the PSVR but was subsequently cancelled. Look, Solaris Offworld Combat is certainly not a bad looking game, and it still certainly has that First Contact look of polish that starts with the menus and can be felt in everything up to the very cool heads-up display in your helmet. Ultimately, I just feel that the overall art style is just a little forgettable and at times feels kind of phoned in, not quite living up to the standards left by Firewall Zero Hour. Esports enthusiasts may ultimately not care about these details, but the game could use a little TLC to smooth out the PSVR port and hopefully add in pro support to iron out those rough textures. Sound is up next.
Point has moved. Stay alert.
Like the visuals, the audio design in Solaris Offworld Combat is an exercise in game polish with a minimalist approach. Everything in the sound mix of Solaris checks all the boxes I go through when reviewing a game's audio for a shooter. Non-intrusive action score? Check. Competent position audio of weapon fire and footsteps? Check. Easy squad talk, loud guns, environment sound cues? Check, check, check. And for you Firewall veterans, love it or hate it, the tap-tap sound effect when you make contact with an enemy returns, again giving you confirmation of your shots hitting their target. But unfortunately, like the visuals, while checking all my criteria of a well-made game, it also suffers from the same sense of blandness, giving the audio design a slightly generic feeling. The music is fine as it sits back in the mix, but it also is completely forgettable. Gun effects sound powerful, but also lack much in the way of personality to separate them from just being the assault rifle or the grenade launcher. In fact, the sound mix as a whole lacks much in the way of personality. Everything here is good and does its job, but it's hard not to feel that with the talent over at First Contact Entertainment, the sound design just feels a little bit phoned in here. And that brings us to gameplay. When Firewall Zero Hour was first shown on the PSVR, it was a game that promised what seemed like the impossible on the aging PS4 hardware. Launch day came, and First Contact had in fact brought a very high-end competitive VR shooter to the market. It had great squad dynamics, fun gunplay, and looked much better than it had any reason to look. Unfortunately, it was also light on content, offered very little to players not wanting to go online, and suffered from some big deficiencies with its matchmaking. I mention this because the launch of Solaris Offworld Combat parallels the launch versions of Firewall Zero Hour in just about all of the mentioned areas. Solaris, like Firewall on the PSVR before it, is a programming marvel, pulling off nice visuals along with 8-player online combat. It also has fun and addictive gunplay and is designed around squad play where communication is key and real friendships can be fostered on the online battlefield. Unfortunately, also like Firewall, Solaris also suffers from no single-player mode, as well as a real lack of content, and only a few consumables found on the battlefield such as proximity mines and temporary barriers. There are no character classes or any real progression outside of some basic cosmetics that unlock as you level up. There are no loadouts. As such, there are no gun attachments or really any way to personalize your combat style. In addition, there's only one game mode, coming in the flavor of Control Point, a defend the point style of squad versus squad play. But let's be clear, Solaris Offworld Combat is in no way the successor of Firewall Zero Hour. In fact, Solaris is the anti-Firewall Zero Hour game, with combat that is fast and fluid, with kills and deaths coming quick and respawning the player before they can even take a drink. Team play is crucial for winning, but unlike Firewall, strategically standing around here in Solaris will get you killed. Time to kill is relatively quick, but players are still squishy enough to take a bit of damage before going down, short of a headshot. Health doesn't recharge, but instead can be picked up on the map along with shield energy and the previously mentioned consumables, as well as weapons. These respawn over time, and memorizing where they are and allocating them is the key to success. So yeah, Rainbow Six for VR this is not. Instead, it seems to borrow elements from a combination of titles such as Unreal Tournament, Echo Arena, First Contact's own ROM Extraction, and some aspects of the superior sci-fi VR shooter Space Junkies. Similarities to other titles aside, though, Solaris Offworld Combat is still a fun, polished, and hectic combat shoot-fest that, while seemingly light in strategy early on, does begin to reveal itself as a title that does possess some depth in its gameplay, as you learn to harness the slide mechanic, maintain speed, and learn the nuances of the map designs. And while Solaris can be played with a tracked DS4 in much the same way as it could in Firewall Zero Hour, the reason to pick this up, and likely the reason Solaris will find more success on the PSVR than in past versions, is, yep, the aim controller. Playing on Quest and PC with 2 motion controllers, only to have my non-dominant hand just gimping along for the ride, I was always aware that this game felt like it was originally designed for the PSVR, and honestly, it probably was. And yes, straight up, Solaris is more fun playing with the aim controller and simply feels like the way the game was meant to be played. With every weapon, the exception of the starting pistol being of the 2-handed variety, holding the aim controller just feels right, and certainly improved my accuracy, bringing it up from pure dogshit to simply just sucking. Weapons, of which there are 5, consist of the starting pistol, assault rifle, shotgun, missile launcher, and the grenade launcher. Thankfully, one huge area where Solaris Offworld Combat improves greatly from Firewall Zero Hour is with its matchmaking. With First Contact opting this time for hosted servers, matchmaking is quicker and even lets you run around the arena and warm up while it finds 8 players to launch. Oh yeah, and it doesn't drop the match if a player leaves the game, something Firewall veterans are sure to appreciate. Also, something that was absent in Solaris when it first launched on PC and Quest was the ability to squad up with your friends before jumping into a match. A glaring absence, and really a deal breaker for me, is thankfully present here for the PSVR launch and makes grouping up with friends quick and easy. Like I previously said, Solaris can be played with either a DS4 or the aim controller, but no move support. The DS4 certainly works here, but you do aim with it using the light bar for tracking, so it doesn't track quite as well as the aim controller with its glowing ball, and it feels a little weird at times. But like in Firewall Zero Hour, there are those players who will dominate with it. As for the majority of you, you will likely be using the aim, and it tracks maybe a little bit better than it did in Firewall, but I still recommend you set up your camera properly to avoid aim drift or excessive occlusion issues when close to the headset. Solaris can be played seated or standing, but requires a moderate amount of room. Being a fast-paced run-and-gun shooter, VR sickness could be an issue here for some, but for those who need it, there are optional blinders and click turning. And finally, that brings me to fun factor, my final review. Like I said, Solaris Offworld Combat really is the anti-Firewall Zero Hour, as instead of the slow, strategic one-death-and-you're-out gameplay of Firewall, Solaris is a fast-paced run-and-gun fragfest with almost instant respawns. Graphically, it certainly exudes the level of polish of a First Contact title, but at this time it feels a little rough around the edges on the PSVR. It's fun and certainly better with an aim controller, but unfortunately, it hasn't come very far since it first launched, and it still remains light on content, with only 7 maps, 5 guns, and 1 mode. As you guys may know, I hate numbered review scores and instead rate games on a basis of buy it, burn it, or wait on it, along with a few details on who this might appeal to more. For me, Solaris is fun, but it's forgettable. I think outside of the more hardcore esport enthusiasts, most will find the game lacks much in the way of gameplay depth and will find most of their enjoyment out of running around the game with a few friends. However, I think this gets old fast, and with no single player content whatsoever, the game feels a little light on content. Fortunately, for the first few weeks from launch, the game is priced to reflect this level of content, and for shooter fans, and specifically those looking for another reason to charge up their aim controller, this is some quick run and gun action that will scratch that itch. At least for a while. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing, guys. As always, I'll catch you on my next video.